Welcome, everyone. We're here today with Robert Jacks on our podcast series, Our Journey to Truth. Robert is joining us all the way from the USA, and this podcast series is going to be a compilation of conversations with Robert. And we are speaking about Robert's journey to truth. We all have our own journey to truth, and Robert's conversations will give us an insight into his journey to the truth, to discovering the peace and the freedom that he has accessed. It's a deep journey. I've already had some conversations with Robert, and we just wanted to share it with everybody. So I want to welcome Robert now to the podcast series. Robert, are you there?
Yes. Good morning. It's early in the morning, 5:45 here in the United States, so it's pretty early.
Good morning, Robert. Nothing better than the early bird. So how are you today? Thank you for
Actually, I'm
joining us.
feeling really good now. I'm feeling really good. I think what we're talking about Passover. It's Passover time. Yesterday, this whole week, and the church is going to be celebrating that. And when he spoke to me a little bit ago and said, just remember me, I was like, oh, got it. And so I just feel really good about today's session with you.
Me too. I'm excited what you're going to share with us because you've shared somewhat details of your journey, to truth. And it's an interesting journey. And I don't know where you're going to start today. I don't really know where you're going to, but I know that your journey started a long time ago, many years back. And it wasn't just one event, it was a number of events. So I'd love you to just take the floor, start where you feel is appropriate. And I know we'll start today and we'll do many more podcast series as we go along. So let us know where you'd like to start, and the floor is yours, Robert.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. First off, I want to say that this is going to be our spiritual journey. Like you said, it's going to be our journey. And I'm going to just start with way back when I was a teenager, and my journey actually got started. And I kind of like to tie it in a little bit to scriptures, because in the future, this is going to be such an awakening for us. You, me, others, anyone who wants to take time to just listen to this podcast or these podcasts. And so I want this to kind of be a foundation or an entry level for me personally. And hopefully we can build on that. So you go back to Moses and those guys, and what was called Passover at that time. There had to be a death. They had to put the blood over the doorposts, the mantles, whatever, and then exit the next day, whatever. And as I was sitting in the silence thinking about today, because I want to give part of my testimony starting way back then and how my life changed and got really set me on this path. And the voice I heard said, remember me. And I was seeing Jesus at the Last Supper with his disciples. And, as he broke bread and the wine, and the bread and the wine is, of course, the food from heaven. And life is always in the blood. And you and I discussed this a little bit. And if we can look at these symbols, these are signs and symbols of the Bible. He's trying to get us a heavenly message across. And the bread, of course, being the word of God, or the brokenness of Christ. And then the blood is life is in the blood, and the blood is the consciousness of Christ. So when they say we're covered in the blood, actually there's one consciousness, and we are in that consciousness. So yes, we're submerged in the blood and the consciousness. But what I understand about remember me, the body of Christ, or the body of, we call it Christ in our Christian society, but it's really one body worldwide. The whole creation is one body of God, one body of Christ. And so when he said, remember me, see, there's people that need to walk it out. There's people that need to use their hands and serve. There's people that need to use their mind and think. The body has many members, and every member has its own function. And I think sometimes we try to do the functions we're not trained for, equipped for, whatever. Just like me, I am really very not good at computers at all. I love them, and I'm not against them. It's just that I'm more of an outdoor, hands-on type person. I grew up like that. So to remember me, and this is what he showed me many years ago, is I'm going to give you just a little example here. You take like a doll, say like a Barbie doll, and you got the torso and the arms and legs and heads everywhere, and you start putting those legs together, and you put them on that torso. And then you put the arms on that torso, then the head, and then you dress it. And you remember the body. It's not a thought. It's not like, oh, I remember Jesus. Oh, I remember the Passover. No, he's not talking about memory. He's talking about literally in the spirit world, remembering his body. We come together, and as we come together, our parts fit together as on this journey. And what we're living and what we're going to in this generation is we are going to open up the consciousness. We're in that generation where the Christ consciousness or the Spirit of God is going to just rule and reign in our lives. The goal is, if people want to get to heaven, well, how about let us bring heaven to earth? And the way to do it is through remember me. Each one of us finds our place in Christ. And that's what's good about what our journey together is. One person can't do it. And I think the body, and I know my life, we've been too scattered, and we got too many different messages going on in the world. And it's okay because that gets us there. But there has to come a time where in some quiet unity we can join together and remember that. You hear what I'm saying? Put
Yeah.
it together. Let's put it together and let's walk this thing out together, and not independently. We got our so many divisions, and the body is fighting and struggling itself. There's one body, there's one race, it's the human race, and the only way to do away with all the 9 plagues that they talk about, or 10 plagues or whatever, is really what's going on in people's mind. You got the locusts, you got the fire, you got the blood of the frogs, and all these things are the human race on the inside, individually and then outwardly. And that's why there seems to be so much chaos and drama and wars and everything, because it's happening in the mind of man, the physical mind. And we want to get in the mind of Christ. And the only way we can do that is when we remember, and it's not a memory. It's not a memory. It's when we can set together in the Christ consciousness. That body has already been formed, and all we do is walk it out, or we present it, and we live it, and it will be the kingdom of heaven. It's the most beautiful place you can go. Is in the Christ mindset. So, are you about ready to get started?
Yes, let's do that. And as you were speaking, it came to me that the body doesn't function. It has to function as a whole unit. If that body is a beautiful analogy, and if we're one body in Christ, which we've heard many times, the finger needs all the other fingers, and the big toe is not separate from the leg. It all functions as a whole, as a unit. And so, yes, to remember is not a memory. It's coming together as one whole structure in
Yeah,
Christ, as
right.
Him, and whole. It's a wholeness, isn't it? It's not being divided. It's not separating yourself from what is around you. It's not separating yourself from, anything in life, because it's all within you at some level. And as you said, the plagues, they are within you. So we
Hmm.
bring everything together into unity, and then we can become whole.
Right. Yes. And that's a different analogy, to kind of look at it, is to remember. And so our journey, and I'm going to talk a little about my journey.
Well,
And so,
I'm looking forward to that, Robert. That's a great place to start with your journey, because I
well,
know
good.
you've had an amazing walk, and so I'm excited for you to share that with us.
All right. Well, I'll probably hit and miss different places, and the timelines may interchange wrong, but it's all part of the journey. So, uh, if you want, I'll just start. Of course, when I was a child, we went to church a great deal, but we tried every church. My mom and dad could not find a single church they liked. I mean, we went from Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal, even we tried a Catholic, uh, just a few sermons here and there, and they just couldn't get satisfied. So I've got a tiny bit of background in most every church. Um, but anyway, that being said, and then you go through your junior high school, and I don't know if you remember, but over here in America in 1980 or 19 in the year 2000, they were teaching this Y2K thing, the end of the world,
Yes.
2000 Z. They were saying the Maya clock ends and this and that. Oh my God, the world's ending, dude. And people were afraid and going hell. And the churches were so big on that here in America, because everyone tries to interpret the world with the Bible and the Bible with the world, and they have very, very little correlation. The Bible is a spiritual book that must be spiritually discerned, and it's about Christ, Him crucified, Him died. He crucified, died, raised, quickened, and seated. And these are the steps. He was crucified in us and for us. crucified. He died on the cross. He died in us and for us. He was raised spiritually, emotionally, but into the what we call the heavens. And he's seated. He's at rest. He's at a place of absolute peace. And we think of all of that. A lot of people do, and they teach it like there's a man on a throne somewhere, a big man or whatever. But it's Christ in us. That throne is our heart and our mind, and Christ in us. And he's at rest, but we might not have found that place of rest yet. We may still be way back there in crucifixion. So anyway, growing up in the churches, I got to hear all these different teachings and sermons and different ideas and views, and like most people, in one ear out the other because it didn't make sense or I didn't understand. But one thing that was really relevant and with me and probably most of society growing up in and around or any kind of religion is the guilt. They make you feel guilty. They make you ashamed. You're going to go to hell. You're going to burn. You're going to do this. And it's like, that's such a lie. Those people are on such a low level of teaching, but that's all they know. And what I've learned uh, is what you talk about the most is probably the level you're at. And if you're teaching doom and gloom, then inside of you, you're probably a doom and gloom person. If you're teaching, oh, they're going to go to hell, well, you're probably living in hell in your own mind, and you don't realize what you're teaching. And if people would wake up and listen to these teachers worldwide, even today, we got the web and we got so much information. If we can listen to what's being said, we can tell what level they're on, and just click the page, change a page or whatever. If it's not really opening you up, bringing you life. So when I was about, okay, this was in 1978, 79, somewhere, and I was about 17 years old. I was in high school, about ready to graduate. Because the world was coming to an end, right? Uh, we were allowed to quit school. I was like, yes, hell yeah. So I quit school at 17, and I had a friend of mine who lived 1,000 miles north of us, and he lived up in South Dakota, and I lived in Oklahoma. And so we left, and I went to South Dakota. Here I'm this young kid, 70. I'm free now. I'm free. There's no school. There's no parents, no anything. And I got long black hair, dark hair, and we were just wild boys. We worked out all the time, drink our beer, had our fun. Those were what they call the good old days, and they were fun. A lot of good times, a lot of good friends, and through that. Of course, I was from down south and I got this southern voice. And in America, there's such different cultures everywhere that there's so many different accents. So I go up north and they thought it was so cool. This southerner, had this accent. I don't hear an accent. But to me, all these Yankees had an accent. It's like, it's beautiful, just beautiful hearing other people's accents. So we fit together. It was awesome. And so I made some very, very lifelong friends, good friends. And in the process, met this lady, met this girl, and we decided to become friends, do all the partying and stuff together. And they were all like a little group of people from their same school, we called it the Valley. We all lived out in the Valley. And so the bunch of Valley rats or Valley people, Valley rowdies, they'd say. Uh, so, from there, me and my wife, we then, my girlfriend, then we started dating and all this. So I'm 17 and she's 15. Age didn't care. We didn't care. Nobody cared. But anyway, so as we dated and stuff, partied on, about a year, about a year later, her mother is like, if you guys are going to continue to do this, you're going to get married. And I didn't want to get married. I had no, I was still young. I was like, married. I didn't get married. I don't want to get married. And, but the only way I could continue to see her daughter is if we got married. So I was forced to get married, not forced, but I love this. We were, boyfriend, girlfriend. We loved each other. Couldn't stand to be away from each other at the time. It was like, how it is. It's a relationship. It's like
Yeah.
that's my person. That's the one I want to be with and the one I want to spend my life with. So we got married, and I was 18, she was 16. Of course, our parents signed off on it and all that. So we got married, and the first 3 years was really awesome. I think like most marriages, everything's good. You're growing together. It's tough. You're trying to figure out how to get your apartment, your furniture, where you're going to get this, where you're going to get that. But it all just eventually shows up. You know how that goes. You got to get everything, your towels, your everything. And so as a young man working, now I'm supporting somebody else. And so I grew up with trucking parents, grandparents, uncles. And so my dad, so I started driving a truck and, making really good money for a teenager or 18-year-old. So we was making decent money. So we was living good. We had a pretty decent life. Things was going good. And I don't know exactly what happened. Just, you bump attitudes or something, or maybe you start growing apart. Who knows? Uh, so for then, let me see, my son was born the fifth year we were married. Yeah. So in the fourth year, that's when we started running into different troubles and stuff. And we lived in this place, little mobile home park just outside of town. And I had this dog. I never had my own personal dog, and it was a wolf. It was a wolf pup, little bitty pup that was given to me like a previous year earlier. And I raised him. He was my little buddy. We just went everywhere. I know wherever I went, that guy went. His name was Conan. I named him Conan, like Conan the Barbarian. And since he wasn't raised around wolves or something, but he still liked to howl. So we would howl together. We would howl all the time. And anytime he had to go outside to use the restroom, he would howl. If he wanted a treat or something, he'd go sit by the treats and howl. He was my buddy. But anyway, so I was at work one day, and he would climb fences. He would never stay in the fence. So that particular day, or when I went to work, I started chaining him up in the fence or whatever. And that day I come home, I couldn't find Conan, couldn't find Conan. I looked everywhere. So I went up and down the neighborhoods, and here he was. There was two or three sheriffs into this dirt road. And I drive down there, and my puppy's laying there dead. They had shot my dog because my dog killed some of their chickens. I was like, oh no. So I walk out there and got out of the truck, and I picked my little limp dog up, and I just started crying and kissing him. It's like, oh my God, you guys killed Conan. And the sheriffs come up. They want to arrest me and stuff. Oh, I cussed them up one side down the other and laid my dog in the truck, and we drove off. And something at that point in time shifted in me. It just is like, oh my God, this is my buddy. This is my baby. I don't know how to explain the depth of what I felt for my dog. Anyway, going on. I better go on. Because that was like 40 something years ago, but it was Conan. It was my buddy. And that's why. But anyway, so my wife's pregnant at this point in time. And then a few months later, we have our son. And oh my gosh, the most glorious thing that could ever happen to me was my son, my baby. And I was there through the whole labor process, labor like 18 hours, and she was miserable, blah blah blah. And when it was said and done, it's funny. She goes, "We're going to name him Leather Lee," because we were kind of like hippies, not hippies, but we liked to party. We were free, and she thought Leather Lee was a beautiful name, whatever. Leather Lee. So it just didn't sit right with me, but it's my wife. We're gonna do whatever she wants because it's we're married. It's our son. So anyway, we went out there, and the doctors, and they're like, "Well, what do you want to name your son?" I said, "Levi Jeremiah." They're like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, write that down. Levi Jeremiah." I said, and Jax, our last name is Jax. So I named my son Levi Jeremiah Jax while she's still in there recovering, so to speak. And then when it come time for her to sign it, she's like, "Oh, I like this so much better. I like this better than Leather Lee." And I said, "Good." I said, "Because in me, Levi had his own tribe in the Bible." And I said, "Man, I want a tribe. I want tons of kids. I want, because I come from a huge family. I got five sisters and tons of cousins. And so I just thought big families is where it's at. I want a big family. So my son is, I want to have a tribe of Levi. And then Jeremiah was, of course, one of the prophets in the Bible. So Levi, Jeremiah, you know what I'm saying? So now me and Levi, we're more attached than me and that darn dog was. So now me and my son Levi, everywhere it is. This is my dad. This is as he grew up. He would just tell everybody, nowhere I'd be at the grocery store. He's like, "That's my dad. This is my dad. This is my dad," to everyone. I mean, just we were that close. You know what I mean? Just beautiful, beautiful relationship. I didn't know till years later that she was so jealous of mine and his relationship. You know what I mean? She But she was the type of person that just didn't want to be around kids. Not saying anything bad about her, because I got relatives. I know people that don't want to be around kids. That's fine. I couldn't understand it, growing up, but because I was raised in a big family, and she was too, but she just did not like really being around kids. So her and my son's relationship was way, way different. It's like, "Get out of here. I'm busy here. No, you can't have that. No, we're not going to the park," or whatever. So me and Levi grew up very, very close for those first 3 years. So after he was born, a year after he was born, and this might, I'm just going to get to some points here in a minute, just kind of giving you some groundwork. Uh, so about a year later, there was we started really arguing, falling apart. I mean, just this and that, everything. I mean, just whatever two people can argue about and fight about in a relationship, and all marriages go through these things. I believe most of them, anyway. So we fought and fought. We just got to where we just grew away. We got to where we couldn't stand each other. So then there was infidelity on both sides. We started looking elsewhere to try to get I guess emotional contact and then physical contact, whatever. And so it grew worse and worse. And this is where my life started to change. I mean, I wanted to, I was being the best dad I could, but I knew the situation that we were in when we having her and I and all this is just so wrong. And one day I sat down, I said, God, I said, I just want to be the best father ever. I said, I just want to be the best father for my son. And I can't stand our relationship, what's happening, what we're going through, how we're raising Levi. I said, I don't want this. I don't want this for my son. And later on, a few years later, I looked at that. I was like, oh, that was the biggest mistake you could have prayed, to be a better father. Because about a year later, and then this is things really got let, she wanted to separate, which was fine. I rented her apartment, got her things moved and everything. She's like, oh, we just need time apart. Well, I knew she had been seeing this other guy on the side. He ran a pawn shop, so he's giving her everything. He gave her leather jacket, leather boots, jewelry, whatever you get from a pawn shop, which is pretty much everything. And so he was basically buying her affection. And I knew, because she'd always come home with different stuff. I'm like, where'd you get that? Oh, so and so gave it to me. And things I couldn't afford, a lot of things I couldn't afford. So anyway, I got her this apartment. She's staying over there, living over there. And one night I went by there to see her because she asked me to bring her something. I forgot what. I think it was an alarm clock, so she could get up the next day. So I go over there, and it's a basement apartment, and the house is above. And as you walk up, you can see right in the basement windows. There, you can just see. And here, and her and this guy, and it's like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. They're down there on the bed, and it's like, oh my God, really? The window's open, the curtains open. You can see everything, but you can see right through the curtains, right? And it's like, oh my God, are you serious? Well, then when I looked at the foot of the bed, my son was asleep at the foot of the bed. I didn't give one rat's butt about what they were doing. Uh, but my heart was like, oh my God. I was like, oh, I ran down to the door and I kicked that door and kicked that door. I wanted to get in so bad. All of a sudden, all the lights in the house went off down there and everything. And I didn't think to break a window, but anyway, so I get in my truck and I leave, and now I'm steaming. Oh, I'm mad. Do what you want, but don't involve my son. Don't get my son there. And he was 2 years old, 2.5 maybe. He's asleep on the bed. So, oh, now I'm aching. I'm bad. I mean, oh, this is getting me. You know what I mean? It's like, this is my son. This is my Levi. No, you can't do this. And so I leave, and I don't know what all I did, but I got madder and madder and madder. And so I went back over there to confront him. Well, his truck was gone. I banged on the door, all the lights were out. She never came. So, and I had bought her a really nice Camaro that we had before. This was long before we split up. She had a really nice Camaro. Man, I started kicking and banging on that Camaro. I pulled open the hood. I yanked everything out from under that hood I could. I broke everything. I was mad. I was not going to support her and her transportation and her lifestyle any longer. I was so hurt, so mad because of my son Levi. I was like, I didn't care what she was doing. She'd already been doing it. I was somewhat past that, but not at the same time. There's still jealousy, still rage going on. So I left, and I knew about where he lived, not 100%. Saw it driving around, and this is snowy, icy, cold weather, and so I drove around. And I found that street he lived on, and then I found his house, and I could kind of see through the light that there was in there, and so man, here it is, and I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm broken. So I take my truck and I just gas it, bam, and I hit his truck, and I shoved that truck all the way up to the front of the house. Right up to the front door and living room. I just right there, and it kind of hits the house, and then I back off. And so I leave. Well, I just went around the block, and I come around the second time. I said, they ain't good enough. And I punched it. I mean, hard as I'm mad. I'm going to get in that house. This time I'm not going to kick in a door. So I hit that truck hard as I can, and I shove it right through the living room. And I mean, buildings falling down, the truck's broken, and it's smashed together and all that. And of course, like pawn shop, whatever. And I thought I saw him coming with the rifle. I was like, oh, great. I wasn't scared or anything. I was just mad. I didn't give a crap. You can shoot me. I don't care. But anyway, I hit my reverse and backed up, and my truck was kind of stuck to his a little bit, and it yanked my bumper off. Now you got to imagine this truck's all smashed in the front, and I'm driving home. My truck's going, the front smashed. There's smoke coming out. My tires burning, antifreeze everywhere, and I lived probably 5 to 7 miles away. So I drove home, and on the way home, oh my God, my heart was just breaking. I didn't even think twice about what I just did, and the damage wasn't nothing to me. But all I could think is my son, Levi. Man, gosh, dang it, I can't believe she did this. She took us too far. And when I got home, I just called 911. I said, look, I said, you guys better come get me, and you better come get me now, because I'm going to go back over there and I'm going to literally hurt them two people. I said, I may just put them out of their misery. I said, because I'm hurt. I'm broke. I don't know what else to do. I said, please send somebody to pick me up right now. And she's like, well, we have officers at the scene over there. And if you'll stay on the phone, just stay on the phone with me and we'll have somebody there. So, I talked to her a few minutes, and here comes all the cops, and front door, they're banging on, or they didn't start banging on the door. They come to the front door, and she's on the phone with me. She's like, well, Robert, I got officers at the front door and the back door. Do you mind opening the door? Let me talk to one of the officers. I'm like, yeah. So I open the door, hand him the phone. They go open the back door. There's 6 or 7 officers standing around me, and it's like deathly quiet. All I can hear is a little bit of chatter on their radios. And I'm just standing there, I'm broken at this point. Had big tears. I cried all the way home from hitting that truck. Anyway, so I'm just broken, It's like, oh man, just stand there broken. And none of the cops said anything. It was just deathly quiet. And I heard him talk to her on the phone. And I realized later, none of them, it's almost like, I don't know, there was a dead silence there. And I think they saw how broke I was. They knew I wasn't a violent man. I was a broken man. And they just stood there looking, and I was just looking down at the ground. I'm still crying. I'm trying to figure it out. Like my mind's going crazy, all the stuff that I just did, plus my son, plus I saw our whole marriage, everything. And then my mind wants to pray. It's like, God, what is happening? All I wanted to do was be a good father. That's it. I prayed to you, the most sincere prayer I ever prayed in my life. And I'm going through, this is what I get, thank you, you know? And so there's this argument, there's this cussing, there's this rage, there's every single plague you could ever think about, you know what I mean, throughout the Bible, everything. And then I didn't call them plagues, but it was anger, it was violence, it was jealousy, it was betrayal, it was love, it was joy, it was peace for God, and ultimate confusion. This guy was in ultimate confusion, living in ultimate confusion. My mind just tearing me apart, my body shivering, my tears just, it's untaught. You can't extract, you know what I mean? You got to be there, you got to live it, and we do.
No, you're describing it pretty well. It's almost like a total breakdown, mentally,
Yes.
emotionally, physically in that moment. Yes.
And spiritually, you're right, everything.
And spiritually, yeah.
Yeah. And see, that's why I want to walk us through this. If I can get through this, what I'm going through, it's the absolute same thing we all go through. Well, different levels, different scenarios, different, somebody else that may be totally different, 100%. But our mind, you see, that's the battlefield and the playground of the enemy right there. And this is what we're going to learn. This is what oh my gosh, because it took me from this, and several years later, we went right into heaven. And so now these guys take me to the car. They don't handcuff me or nothing. They're just so gentle and quiet. All of them. I think there was 6, but I ain't for sure. So we get in the car. I remember going to jail, and they had to write up the charges. Well, there's 3 counts of charges that the other cops at the other location had written up. 2 accounts of attempted murder for them two. They're the only 2 there, and account of destruction of private property. So they wrote all this up. Well, in our law, each one of them carried a 10-year term. So they're booking me in and fingerprints and all that. And they told me what my charges were. And said, well, you're facing 30 years in the penitentiary for this. Oh my God, you talk about pouring gas on the fire. Now I'm burning on the inside as far as, it just got worse. Because now, and they had to wear the felons in America had to put on an orange jumpsuit if you're going to jail. Shows you're violent, shows you're a criminal. And so I was in this orange jumpsuit, and they put me in this cell with 10 or 15 people and all these guys, and nobody had an orange suit but me, which no big deal. It's just the fact that I was considered, these guys were probably just nuisance or public drunks or whatever. And so I go to the back there. They all just kind of look at me and just keep their conversations going, whatever. Nobody cares. Uh, so I'm sitting in the back, and now just sitting there, my mind is absolutely, and that's worse. Now I got 30 years on top of that, and I'm thinking, oh my God, my son, I just lost my son. I'll never see my son. I'll never be able to raise Levi. I'll never be able to hold him and kiss him and be with him. And everything about Levi was going through me in spite of the chaos, in spite of everything. And as I'm going through this, I mean, you can imagine a picture, correct?
Absolutely. I can picture it. I can picture the torment.
And so I'm sitting there, and this voice said, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge me, and I will direct your path." And the chaos was instant. Not just back into chaos, and I'm sitting there just, a little few tears here and there. I don't want to cry in front of all these guys, but a few tears, but the anger and the madness inside of me for the next 2 or 3 hours. And all of a sudden, I stopped on the inside. Wait a minute, wait a minute. I was mad. I was like, wait a minute. I just screamed at myself. Said, "Did I hear a voice a while ago? Did I hear you say to trust in you? Did I hear that still small voice? Did I hear that? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own chaotic mind." And I heard it, and it went through me again. It's peaceful and it's gentle. And when the voice spoke, all the chaos stopped. And then instantly I said, all right, God, I don't know, because I grew up with you, but if that was your voice, you get me out of here today, and I'm going to change my life. You just get me out of here. I don't know how the hell this is going to work. Get me out of here. I don't know what to do. I know I'm facing 30 years. Well, I don't know. And so then I'm sitting there, and all the chaos is back, right? And thinking, oh man, was that the voice of God? Now it's, my mind's thinking something else. If that was God, no, God couldn't hurt. God ain't gonna help me. Look at the crap I just did. You know what I mean? Yeah, blah blah blah. My mind's still at it, and the big cell door opens up, yeah, all kind of noise, and a guy in a suit walks in, and a couple of officers, and they said, Robert Jacks, and I was way at the back. I said, yeah, come up here. So I go up there. Well, this guy's a bail bondsman, and the cops are with him. They took me out front, and I'd never been in jail. I never knew what the processes were. And they said, "This is a bondsman. He'd like to talk to you." And so he's like, "Oh, Mr. Jacks, I can probably get you a bond to get you out of here." And I'm like, "Well, what's a bond, and what do I need to do?" And so he's like, "Well, first off, let's call the judge and see if I can set you a bond." And this is 5 o'clock in the morning, Super Bowl morning, and that's how I know, because it was Super Bowl day. It was Sunday morning. And he calls this judge, and the first thing that he tells the judge a little bit, and that judge is cussing this guy like a dog on the phone. He's holding the phone out, and I can hear the judge cussing him. "Don't you ever wake me up on Super Bowl Sunday, because some effing felon and this and that, and this is the dumbest phone call I ever got." And the judge is cussing at him. And so he told him that real quick the charges, and he said, "Never been in trouble, blah, blah, blah." The judge said, "Well, set his bond at $7,500. So $7,500. And he hangs up. He's got this grand. He goes, "You hear that?" Yeah, I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, all you need is $7,500, and I can get you out of here." My mind's going crazy. I'm like, "Where in the heck am I going to get $7,500? I'm broke. I just totaled my car, my truck. Uh, I've been paying her bills and my bills. I can't live. I have no money. I am broke." My mind's just going at it and going at it. And so this one friend of mine, and Marty, I called him. He lived out in the valley at 5:30 now. I called him, "Marty, I'm in jail, man. I need to be bonded out." And he said I needed $750. "Oh man, Junior, I don't have it. I don't got it. I got a couple hundred maybe, but in savings or whatever." He goes, "I know. Oh, I know." He goes, "Just ask him if he'll take the title to my car." He goes, "The bondsman always takes title. They'll take a title on anything, because him and his family been through this stuff." And so I asked the bondsman, "So will you take the title to the guy's car, or Marty's car?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, tell him to bring it down." He goes, "You'll be out of here in an hour." And that happened. He brought the title down. I got out of jail. And so God kind of answered that prayer. Remember, I said, "Get me out of here." And I was realizing that right then, this silence started coming in me, although there's massive, massive chaos. I had one or two little bleeps of silence. You know what I mean? And it's also a relief just to get out of jail. I was only in there a few hours, but just to get back into my clothes and get in Marty's car. And right away he's like, "Oh man, what happened?" And I started telling him, and now I'm crying trying to tell him. And he pulls out this nice big old joint, and he's like, "Oh, come on, Junior," because we smoked pot together every day. That's one of my pot buddies. We loved each other. And It's 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, Marty, I can't, man. He goes, why not? Why not? You know, this is good shit. And I said, I just told God that I would change my life, man. I said, I got to do something to change. I got to change for Levi, if nothing else. I got to change. And so anyway, he took me home, I suppose, and dropped me off. And then now, see, since I got in trouble, now I got court dates and stuff coming up, and I don't have a job. I don't have. It's wintertime, thick snow, heavy snow everywhere. Uh, because I lost my job, lost my driver's license, so couldn't go to work because of that. No vehicle, so now I'm walking everywhere. If I walk to the store, walk here, walk there. So I walked down to this church downtown, and it's predominantly black pastor, all that stuff. And but they just welcomed me. They just had me there. They loved me having me there. But most people didn't even. I'm sure you could tell by looking. I'm just a broken man. I'm just a broken person walking around. I'm a dead man walking. I'm a zombie. You know, on the inside, I'm just still fighting all this. You know what I mean? My head, my mind. You know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to pay this? And so time goes by. And of course, the pastor in his own way starts taking me under his wing, just loving me and teaching me because he knew, you know, I didn't have to tell him my story. You could tell by my face, my life, my walk. You could tell this he's just not here. He's a dead man. So going on from there, I started learning a few things from him. A very, very gentle guy, very loving, caring guy. Talking one night, I was leaving there, and I was just so torn, I'm just so broken, just sitting back there crying. And he come back right by the door right before I left, and he looked at me and put both his hands under my chin and raised me up. He said, "Junior, don't cry." Ooh, he said, he said, "You're beautiful."
Wow.
And that love, ooh, I was being loved. You know what I mean? In the midst of hell.
Yeah.
Because by the picture in the life I was in hell, correct? So, so I left that night and walking home, you know, in the snow and blizzard and all that. It's like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And, you know, I walked everywhere and just, you know, I dressed for it. Up north, you know, to dress for it. So I wasn't cold by any means. My mind was too far gone to even feel the cold, I think. So, you know, I'm going home that night, but I felt a little bit of love. I felt a little bit more relief. You know what I mean? Somebody kissed my cheeks. Now, man's never kissed me my whole life. You know, that was unthinkable, unforgivable when me growing up, you know. But it was so tender and so beautiful, and his love was so pure. You know, it's like Jesus himself right there and tell it in his own way. And he told me it's going to be okay. And you're just so beautiful. He said, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. And so, you know, going home now, I'm thinking about this and I'm just walking down the road and like I said, it's 10, 11 o'clock, hardly nobody out. And sorry, I got to hold my phone. I don't have a rack to put it on. So anyway, and I told you this little part. So I'm walking down through there. Right before I left, another guy come up and he gave me $2 because they knew, yeah, he must know I was broke. And so I had that $2 folded up in my pocket. I'm just walking down the street and these two big old gentlemen walking towards me. It's just, you can imagine a real dim, dark night with snow and every now and then a street light downtown. So it's kind of dim, you know, and snowing. And they walk past, no problem. I keep walking. About a half a block later, something in me said they're going to rob you. So I just turned around and looked at them because they were already headed back to me. So I'm just standing there waiting, and there's no sense in fearing. You can't hurt me. You know what I mean? I'm broke. You do what you need to do. You know, I'll fight if I have to fight. I didn't care. It didn't even enter my mind. I was such a broken person. These guys couldn't hurt me. I don't care what they could have done because what they could have done couldn't have happened, couldn't have hurt me more than what I did to myself, you know, with my family and my son. And so just as the biggest one got close to me, he reached out like he was going to grab me, and I stuck my hand in his hand like shaking hands, and that $2 was in my hand. And he grabbed it real quick. And he looked down at me and froze. He goes, "Thy kingdom come," and he turned around and walked off. And I was like, well, that was strange. You know what I mean? That was strange. Thy kingdom come, but I'm like, that's God right there. He just protected me. Anyway, um, so I was walking in the snow, right? It's late at night now. I'm guessing it's probably close to midnight. Real heavy snow and fog, and I'm like the only one out. And so I'm walking down the middle of the like a 4-lane road because it's going through town, going out of town actually. and real. And I'm at peace. I'm just walking. I mean, after all the pastor done kissed me and told me I was beautiful, so I'm trying to process this because I know, to me, that was Jesus. Jesus did that. You know what I mean? And so I'm walking down the road, and out of nowhere, this I can see these headlights coming at me. And on the other side, very, very slow because of the ice and snow. And then the car passes me, no big deal. I'm just, I'm in my two lanes, basically just walking. And the voice inside me, I began to hear it again. I was hearing it all the time now. And I really had to fight it because I'm like, is this God? Is this Jesus? I'm not going to go tell that person that. That's ridiculous, and stuff like that. And anyway, the voice inside me said, when he comes back, tell him I love him. And I just kept walking, not thinking much of it. And then I turned around to look to see if he's coming back. And when I turned around, he's probably a mile or so behind me. I couldn't even see the car, but I saw brake lights. And then I saw the headlights. The guy turned around. So I knew he was coming back, and no big deal. I'm just start walking and keep watching because I know he's coming to talk to me. I'm the only one out there. And so he pulls up. He's like, man, you shouldn't be walking out here, or whatever. And I told him, I said, yeah, I'm just going home. I just got a couple more miles, whatever. And he goes, where do you live? I said, out in Rapid Valley. And he goes, I can take you out there and drop you off if you want. And I was like, man, I don't mind walking. I walk everywhere. I walk all the time. I like it. I like it. And he insisted. He goes, no, please get in. Come on, man. I'm going to take you. I ain't going to just let you walk. So I get in, starts a little conversation. I don't even remember what. And he said, well, so what are you doing or whatever? Why are you out walking? And I said, well, actually, I got to tell you something. And he's like, what? You're going to tell me something? You're out there walking just so you could tell me something? I said, I don't know. I said, but listen, I heard this voice on the inside, and it said to tell you that I love you. And he just kind of froze and looked at me, and he pulls over in this parking lot, and he's just sitting there real quiet. And he goes, a voice told you to tell me I love you. And I was like, yeah, that's what it told me, man. I just had to tell you. And so he starts crying. He's just gripping the steering wheel stuff, and he just starts crying and crying. So now I know something's going on. And he starts to break down and telling me his life, and he's married and stuff. And he's like, he goes, man, I roam the streets at night, and I've done it for years. And he said, I look for young men that I can go have sex with. And he goes, I'm a deacon in my church. I've been married. I got kids. He goes, and you're going to tell me God loves me? He said, I had a whole different plan in mind. And he's just weeping and he's breaking and he's telling me his story. And see, that's what this is all about, is our story. You know what I mean? And this man, and then I heard his horror story. And then he told me what happened to him as a little boy. It's it's strange because other people's stories were more devastating than my story. But I listened and stuff, and then and he broke, and and then he got free, and then we prayed, so to speak, and he dropped me off and went on his way. I never heard from me, seen from me again. But these little acts had been starting to show up in my life more and more. I'd be somewhere, I could be in a grocery store. Some lady or someone would struck up a conversation, and then I would hear their horror story. Out of nowhere, people would just pour out. And God, my heart would just break. It just break and break. And I realized more and more as I was going through this, my story wasn't nothing. My people have been hurt and broken so much deeper and further than I ever was. But anyway, my life continued on walking everywhere. But that night when I got home, since I was at church, my ex had asked me if she could go over there and get some things. I'm like, yeah, just get whatever you need. So, but when I got home, the house was empty completely. Everything, all my clothes, all her clothes, everything, all the kids' stuff, all the dishes, there was nothing left but a kitchen table, which belonged to the trailer. Yeah, it belonged to the trailer, and the couch. And there was an old blanket we covered the couch with because it was such an old, ugly couch. We left a blanket on the couch to cover it. So that blanket was there, the dining room table with two chairs. And I had already been a couple of days without food, just walking around stuff, but I didn't care about me anymore. I didn't even think about food. Um, but anyway, this went on for a while, right? So just now I'm in an empty house. I mean, now it's really empty. I'm stripped of everything. And I knew, part of me is like, she needed to do that. She needs to hate me forever. I was the epitome of somebody that needs to be hate and dealt with. I'm glad she took everything, justify whatever she needs to. I felt, go for it. That lady took all my fishing equipment. She took all my sporting goods and stuff. my boots, everything. I was left. I was left with the clothes I had on, which I had coveralls on, plus my clothes, my jacket, my gloves, and the boots I had on. And that was it. That was it. That was it. That's all I had. And I had been walking around in these for days. And then whatever change I got up, I would wear my coveralls to the laundromat, wash that suit of clothes, and put it back on. Um, no big deal. But anyway, throughout these walks and these journeys, I would meet more and more people. They just at night, usually coming into my life, walking. But I was my pastor. He had 5 or maybe 10 guys. He was training to be young pastors, so to speak. So my whole life now consisted of walking and going to church. That was it. No, nothing. And that Wednesday night, he wanted each one of us throughout the week to write a sermon. And so this is my first sermon, and I wrote it. And I didn't know what to write or anything, but it was called Prisoner of War because I wrote about what was going on in me. And that was the title, Prisoner of War.
Okay.
So I walked and got to church, and I was late, about 30 minutes late. And when I got in there, of course, he was angry with me for being late. So he told me, Junior, you can't be late. When I have meetings, you got to be here, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry, Pastor, blah, blah, blah. I had to walk and blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the meeting, it was my turn to he goes, we don't have enough time. He goes, we're not going to do yours. You was late. He goes, I'm sorry. You just don't have time. And I felt scolded. You know what I mean? He's doing his job, which is good. And then I said, well, that's all right. I left it at home anyway. And, but another guy was sitting there with paper and pen, and he goes, Junior, just write it out real quick. Just write it out. So I tried to write it out, but it was Prisoner of War. And that was the name of my first ever sermon. And I wasn't even a pastor or nothing. I'm a broken dead man walking around. But I wrote down what was going on in me. And something clicked with those guys when I read it. My pastor and them, they just sat there and I don't know what exactly I wrote. And since then, I don't have it anymore. I don't know what happened through 40 years of whatever. But so this is my journey now, right? I'm on this journey, but I'm getting more and more peace. And so the time comes up now. I'm getting very close to. I got to go see a probation officer and find out what they're going to do because, although I got oh no, not yet, just yet. So this is what happened. The next few days, we had a really bad blizzard coming, and it was recorded the second worst blizzard in the history of that recorded time. And so I'm in my little trailer, nothing there, nothing.
Robert,
And
can I just ask you a quick question? What length of time
yes.
now are we looking at? Are we looking at a weeks or a month between the time you got out on bail up until this moment?
Yeah, timeline wise, I'm not real sure, but it must have been weeks and weeks. Me walking back and forth and learning. I don't know, it could have been months. Because
Okay.
eventually it was months. You know what I mean? Just no vehicle, no nothing. Just every now and then. And my pastor, he would let me go in the basement of the church and eat. Uh, because they had like a big ballroom down there. I don't know what you call it, but that's where they had all their gatherings when they had meat or food and stuff. And so the refrigerator was usually full of leftovers and stuff like that, and bread and wine or whatever. But so I would go down there every now and then when nobody was there, and he gave me a key. And so that's how I could eat. And so, but anyway, I was at home, and this one night the blizzard came. And when the blizzard came, of course, it's deep and all this. And it was a 3-day blizzard. And I was in that house. Electricity went out. Had no electricity, no phone, no nothing. And it was the snow was like 15, 18 feet tall with the blizzard wind. Uh, I mean, the whole place, my mobile home and the whole mobile home park was covered. You couldn't even look out the windows anymore. But when I got out, I realized how deep it was. So for 3 days and 3 nights, I laid on that couch just shivering with that one blanket. No heat, no electricity, no phone call, no nothing. We had nothing. I had nothing. And so laying there, just all you could do is just hope that you'd survive, I guess, and just pray. And I remember one point in time I got up and I went in the kitchen. I was so hungry, and I opened all the cabinets. I looked everywhere, and I found in the back of the cabinet, I found a can of chicken noodle soup. I was so happy. I grabbed it. I was like, yes. So I get it out, and there's no way to open it. There's no silverware. There's no nothing. And I looked around, and opened the cabinets, and under the cabinet, under the kitchen sink, there was an old butter knife. For what reason? I don't know. Must have used it for a tool. So I washed it off, or took my thing and wiped it off real best I could. I jabbed that can and jabbed that can. It took me forever. I finally got it open, and that chicken noodle soup was frozen solid.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
Just a big old clump of ice. I couldn't even get it out, So back to the couch, So, and after about 3 days, and on the third or fourth day, I heard somebody outside yelling, Junior, Junior. Is like, yeah, man, I'm in here. And my two buddies had come and they had shoveled me out. And when I walked outside, I was like, oh my gosh, the snow's top of all the trailers. They dug a tunnel basically from the parking lot up to my house to get me out. And this was the bad, bad blizzard. You know what I mean? And like, come on, let's go smoke a joint or whatever. And I was like, well, I don't want to smoke a joint, but I want to get out of here, you know? And so one of them, we went, we got a bite to eat or whatever. They bought me some food. They knew what I was going through, you know, so they bought me some food, whatever. And then shortly thereafter, of course, I didn't have any money, no job or nothing. So I lost my trailer, the place I was living. And so I went to the church and told pastor, you know, Mr. Kelly, da da da. He's like, Junior, just you got the key. Just stay in the basement. You stay in the basement of the church till you get on your feet. So that's where I started living, and nobody knew upstairs, at least unless he told somebody. I didn't. I was ashamed. You know what I mean? I want nobody to know where I was at. But I had food and it was warm, and there was no shower, but there was a big kitchen sink, and then they had this big room like where you could wash mops and all that stuff, so I could clean up. Anyway, so this went on, and then I had my meeting with my probation officer. I kind of let him know. He's like, where are you? Because I had to keep in touch, tell him where you're living and all that. So I tell him I'm living in the basement of the church and blah, blah, blah. He's on the phone. He gets on the phone and he's talking to somebody he knows, and he hangs up. And he goes, I got you a job. I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, I got you a job. He goes, matter of fact, I got you a house. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, this friend of mine, I think I've known him forever. And now this is a probation officer, and they're supposed to, you know, be against you and, you know, lay the rule down, and you're going to follow these rules and all this. And he's like, yeah, he's going to pick you up this evening at your church. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, he owns a ranch about 50 miles out of town. He's a rancher. He's got 12,000 acres. He's got 2 or 3,000 head of cattle. He needs help. He needs a worker really bad. And I knew he did. And that's why I told him your story that, you know, you're in trouble, you're on probation until you pay your fines. And then after that, all charges would have been dropped. So leading up to that, now this is a probation officer. I got to back up just a little bit because now I go to court, right? So I go to court, and right before we went to court, I had several, actually, so it must have been months because I had a few months of different hearings, preliminary hearing, a plead hearing, and different stuff. And so they decided to plea deal with me. They gave me a court-appointed attorney. So they had a plea deal. They would drop the 2 charges of attempted murder. I'd be guilty of destruction of private property, and I would have to spend 7 years in prison. And that was better than 30. So I felt relieved. I was like, a little relief, not much. I'm like, I still don't want to go to jail, go to prison. But anyway, so that was our deal. And it was signed, everything. And all we had to do is go before the judge and plead this deal. So the court date come up where it's sentencing day, right? And so we go in there. And of course, I had to go back to jail, put on the orange clothes. I don't know why this happened, but I had to go in there with all these other guys, and we're all in chains and shackles to our feet, to our hands. Okay. So we go before the judge, and first, this first guy up, he gets 10, 15 years. Next guy, 20 years, 15, 18, there's like 10 guys there. But, you know, one guy got 5 years, another guy got 12, and now I'm the last one. And I'm just sitting there shaking in my boots, man. I'm going to go to prison for 7 years. It's like, oh, my mind is just crazy again. It's like, you know, oh my God, I was just so panicking and, you know, scared. I mean, this is it. I'm going to see my son for 7 years. That's all I could think about was my son and who's going to raise him. What's going to happen? Is he going to be okay? And my mind was just absolutely going crazy. Now, this was all quiet court, you know, just the guys would go up. Everybody had plea deals. The judge would say, do you agree to this deal? And their attorney would talk. They would talk, yes, sir. Okay, well, I sent it to you. And they would walk off and go get set back on the bench, right? And so now it's my turn. I'm the last one. And as I walk up there between the state's attorney and my attorney, and the judge stood up and he slammed his gavel hard as he could, and he yelled to the top of his lungs, let me tell you something, young man. This is the worst reason I've ever heard for anyone getting 3 felony accounts on their record. And I'm going to tell you right now, and the whole court needs to hear me. I'm dropping all these charges. Every one of these charges are being dropped right now. And he yelled at me. And I was like in shock because he's yelling for, you know, I'm like, oh my God, he's mad at me. You know, he didn't yell at nobody else, you know, and he's just screaming at the top of his lung. I almost didn't hear what he was saying. And then it dawned on me, he just dropped all the charges. You know what I mean? So now I'm just boohooing. I mean, tears just flowing. You know, you could feel the release. It's like, oh, after all these months, you know, walking and starving and all this, and here it goes, and it's just a release. He dropped all charges. And he's like, and I'll wipe this off your record, but you're going to pay restitution. You're going to pay for all those damages. And if you're ever in my courtroom again, you will pay all the charge. You will spend the whole 7 years in prison. I'm like, oh, yes, sir. Yes. And I got handcuffs on, right? And I'm walking up towards the judge with my handcuffs. And now I got my attorney, state's attorney, a couple of bailiffs holding me, a couple of guys in front of me, and I'm just pushing my way to that judge. And he's still standing. He reaches over, and they're like, "You can't approach the judge. You can't approach the judge." I had no clue. I've never been in trouble. And so the judge reached over and shook my hand, and he winked at me.
Wow.
He goes, "Uncuff that man." You
Wow.
know, isn't that beautiful?
That's so good.
And so God was working in my life. You see what I
Yeah.
mean? And I was beginning to grow and realize it. And he just real gentle and soft. He said, "Uncuff that man." You know, and they uncuffed me, and everybody's looking around and stuff. And my lawyer, he said, "Don't ever approach a judge, ever." I was like, I didn't get attention. I was just elated. I was just total. I mean, God, think about it. You know what I mean? What a relief. So as I left there, and my journey continued, I worked on the ranch for a while. And I'll tell you this one little story, and then this is how it all began. That's all. So I'm working out on that ranch. I've been out there 5 or 6 months. And we grew up in the country. So I knew how to ride horses. I knew how to, feed animals and take care of animals and all that. So I was a perfect fit for the guy. And he got to where he liked me. He had an old 3-bedroom house that belonged to his grandparents. And so it was just sitting there empty, still had furniture and dishes and all that. And that's what he let me live, free room and board for working on the ranch. And I made like, I think it was 500 or 700 a month cash. But every day at 4 o'clock, your chores started. And at 6:30, you went in the house and his wife had made breakfast for everyone. And then you went back out and worked on the ranch. So this went on for a while, and he loaned me his pickup one weekend to go to town. And when he did, I was just sitting in a park. I had nobody to visit, nowhere to go. So I'm just sitting in a park, reading the Bible, trying to figure stuff out. My life's better now because at least I'm free, but I'm still on probation. And the judge said, if you so much as get a parking ticket or get a speeding ticket, you're going to jail. So I'm minding my P's and Q's, and I'm sitting there reading. And in front of me at the park is another guy in a car. And that guy gets out and he goes over to the garbage can, throws over his garbage, just nods at me and gets in his car and leaves. About 10 minutes later, he comes pulling up real fast and in front of me, he goes running to the garbage can and picks up his sack, and he digs through his sack and he pulls out his wallet. And he's all grinning at me, shaking his wallet. And so he felt the need to come tell me what happened. So he comes over. This guy's like 6'6". He is huge, man, probably 300 pounds, big old guy. And he walks up to my window, goes, "Man, I just wanted you to know I wasn't digging in the garbage. I threw my wallet in the sack and threw it away." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I got that. So I'm glad you found it or whatever." He's like, "Oh, you're reading the Bible, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I just trying to kill some time. I had to go back to the farm ranch tonight, and I just wanted to kill some time." And he goes, "You got any messages or anything for me?" And he's grinning real big. "Anything you want to tell me?" And right then the Lord said, "Yeah, tell him he's been in prison all his life." I mean, that voice just said, "Tell him he's been in prison his whole life." I looked up at him. I said, "Well," I said, "actually," I said, "I see prison bars all around you, and I think you've been in prison your whole life." And he just looked at me, and his eyes got just as big, and he's like, "Oh, wonder what that means. Wonder what God's trying to tell you." I said, "I don't know." And my pickup truck was full of my dirty clothes and blankets and stuff. I come down to wash everything. So he couldn't get in, and he goes, "Can you come sit in my car and talk to me a minute?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." So I go sit up there and we're talking, and he goes, "I do feel like I'm in prison." He goes, "Man, I've been struggling my whole life, blah, blah, blah." And he started telling me his story. And then he get to this one point, and he goes, "I'm married. I've got kids." And he's like 50 something. I'm still in my 20s, 28, 29, somewhere in there. And he starts telling me his story. And oh my God, another horror story, about growing up and all the things that happen and all the everything, people's stories, just, real life, real life. So I'm just me. I'm just sitting there listening. I'm like, "Oh man, it's going to be all right. I don't have no word. I don't have no special thing to tell him or anything." I'm like, "Man, it'll be all right. I know. I'll, let's pray, or if you want to pray or whatever." And he's just, really, he's crying a little bit, just not, a little bit, letting me know how he feels. Because he said, "I just hate cheating on my wife. I hate it. I've been doing this many, many years. She has no clue. But, every now and then I have a fling or whatever," and telling me his story. And I said, "Well, let's pray about it." And as soon as we got quiet, the voice inside me, because he goes, "Do you think God's going to tell us something?" And the voice in me said, "Tell him today is the day of salvation." And I looked over and I said, "Yeah." I said, "Today's the day of salvation." And that's when he lost it. He's just this great big man, just bouncing, crying, and there's these groaning, oh God, oh God, oh God. And I mean, just this seemed like it went on for 10, 15 minutes. He just could not get it all out. It was a broken man. And I saw that and I realized now I'm crying, watching him. And as we prayed and stuff, and then we went on our way, but he got my number, I got his number, and we became such good friends. That guy started taking care of me as far as he wanted me to come to town more, and then which I didn't have a vehicle. He would drive all the way out to that ranch and pick me up. We would go eat or something, and eventually I just saved up enough money to buy me a car, so I quit that job, went to town. As long as I was paying my restitution, I could do anything. And so I just wanted you to know it's our journey. And from then on, a few years later, we went to court. My ex-wife and we got divorced. She would not let me see my son for the first 3 years. I kept taking her to court. I just want to see my son. Finally, the judge is like, well, let's put the shoe on the other foot. So he gave me complete, absolutely 100% custody. She didn't even get visitation rights. Gave me 100% custody. And so I packed up my son and we moved to Oklahoma around my folks. And so from then till my son graduated college, I was a single parent raising my son. First 3 or 4 years he was in school, couldn't do it. And so I homeschooled him. And so he went on the road with me, and I homeschooled him. I went down and I studied and got my teacher's license, and I became a homeschool teacher. And so after that, from then till whenever, life was hard again, up and downs. Life smacks you. Even in the best of times, you have your ups and downs, and that's all of us. And so this is just a little entry to some of the things I went through. But through that all, people kept coming to me, and they still do all the time, all the time. And the Lord whispers something in me, and I'm able to just help them a little bit. And so over the last several years, and I just want to mention this. So I'm somewhere in the early 90s, out by my folks. They live way out in the country. Mom and Dad's like, come on, go to this little church with me. And I did. And I met the two most wonderful people I've ever met in my life. You talk about people full of love. And I'm Frank and Kathy Hodge. They're my friends still to this day, good friends. And he was the pastor of the church and his wife. And they loved this. I'm still broken. I'm still going through it. I'm still learning. You know what I mean? Now I got my kid and I'm happy about that. But there's so much raising a kid and teaching them and plus working, paying. But anyway, he began to let me and train me to, help with the church, be a pastor and all that. So him and I, after a few years, we were getting into types and shadows of the Bible. And our minds was starting to understand scripture totally different than it had ever been taught. And then a few years later, and this is where I kind of met you here a few back, but about the last 15 years, I've been pretty much strictly alone because my son's grown, got kids of his own. They got their life going, and there's visiting and stuff. But so I've just been alone, and so I spend all my time studying, praying, listening to the silence, and then I met Joel Goldsmith, through his teachings and through YouTube, and so now my life has changed drastically, and now I've been completely set free. And I've taken on, after several years, in 1994, as a matter of fact, I had an awakening that you and I had talked about. And now it's like I live in that atmosphere of the Christ consciousness. And so that's what you mind in your journey, future journey, and with these podcasts, we're going to lead people right into the throne room of God. And it's not some heaven somewhere, it's right inside of us. And so that's just a kind of an introductory to my journey. And so what do you got to say?
Wow, that is certainly you're a great storyteller, Robert. There's nobody out there that won't get the full picture of the torment that you went through. And I love the way you started off about the plagues. Was it the 9 plagues or the 7 plagues for anybody who knows the Bible? And they are, a symbolism of what goes on inside of us.
Yes.
Because the real war is with ourselves.
Yeah, and I was a
And
prisoner of war.
yeah,
Yes.
and the inner war, and this is only from my own experience, it does show up on the outside. It doesn't always seem like that. It often seems like life is against us. Things are
Yeah.
tough. And of course, that's the case, But at the end of it, what we really got to do is to realize that all the responsibility of everything in our lives is it's real. We can't abdicate responsibility to anybody else. So it's not always easy to understand that the inside and the outside are a good match in many cases. Now, there's often injustices and, different things for different people, but we all go through a journey,
Oh
and it
yeah.
has its ups and downs. And I don't think there's anyone out there that hasn't had turmoil. For some,
Right.
it's more than others, but
That's another reason why. Go
it's
ahead. I'm
often
sorry about that.
it's often in the turmoil that we get the biggest awakenings. It's often in the darkness that God is hidden. It's often it's through the darkness that the light becomes apparent. And so I love the journey. And when you really use the journey and understand the journey a little bit more, because there comes a point, and this is just through personal experience, when you have to stop telling the story
Right.
and you have to sit in the story and understand it, and then begin to let the story transform you,
Hmm.
and to realize that through the story and through the pain and through the torment, there are things that can be used to bring you to a higher place, to a higher understanding. And you said in the beginning, Christ is the consciousness, the higher level of understanding. And that's all of our journeys. And it's different for
Yes.
everybody. And there's no one way, there are many ways. So, yes,
And,
as you were speaking, I was just remembering my own journey, and I think a lot of people will relate to it. So, thank you for being so transparent and for being so, vulnerable. Actually, it's a deep story. But do you think that before we end here today, just because you shared a lot with us and the time that you were broken, um, do you think that that was a time for you when you really did begin to trust in that still small voice within, because that's the voice that you got in the prison when you were in the cell? That voice came and said, trust the Lord. What was it exactly he said again? It was,
it's actually a scripture. It's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
mhm,
And it's trust in the Lord with all your
with
heart.
all your heart,
Lean not unto your own
own
understanding.
understanding.
In all your ways acknowledge me, and I will direct your path. And yeah, and so yes, you're right. That ever since I was a kid, things that had to me, different spiritual things I can't talk about right now. But until I heard that voice clearly that night in jail, and then walking all the miles I walked, all the, you know, and then I would hear the voice, and I would hear the voice every now and then. And I fought and struggled so hard because it is the most calm, still, subtle thing that'll happen to you. And like I was talking before, and Joel teaches, sometimes it's not a voice, it's just a knowing, or it's a clarity, or it's a relief, or a deep breath. Sometimes you're going through something, but you'll get a little bit of relief. That's the voice. And so it's recognition. We have to learn to recognize that voice or that movement on the inside, because everything comes from the inside, like you said, and then it appears on the outside. And there becomes an emanation in us. And once we're aware of that voice emanating in us, or that whatever it is, and it is Christ consciousness, I assure you, and then we start growing out of that. And it got to where, in through my years, I mean, still working, still struggling, still driving a truck, still paying bills, but I would have my quiet moments because I was the type of truck driver going down the road. I would listen to the Bible on tape or on CD 24/7, even if I was ignoring it, doing my business. But eventually I would be saying the scriptures as they come. I'm like, all right, I know this, blah, blah, blah. And I'd read it, as it's playing. And so that helped me a great deal too, because sometimes now you're off nowhere and a still small scripture will come right through you, and you'll hear it just like that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. So yes, the voice, that's when I really started getting training in hearing this very subtle, small voice. And for, I would say 99% of the time, probably in my life, it's never for me, ever, ever. But I got the joy of being in the peace and hearing it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But it's usually for someone I meet, or a
Yeah.
situation we come against, or whatever. And like you was talking earlier, there's really no problems. It's out here. All the problems are out here. But as within, so without. The drama and stuff that we go through in our brain has to have a way to show up. Whether it's ups, downs, goods, bads, and then we get to a point where we get beyond good and bad, because your life can be very good today. That person you love the most can be very good to you today, and tomorrow all hell can break loose, and that person could be your worst enemy or your worst nightmare, or you could hate them or they could hate you. And so you really can't rely on people, no matter how much you love them or whatever, because things can shift in the good and bad world. If things are good today, they can be bad also.
Yes.
So the Christ mind takes you beyond that,
Yeah.
and it takes you into a place of absolute silence and bliss. And when you not only hear that voice, and you start recognizing the silence, the deep, deep, overwhelming silence. And I told you this: there is a symphony going on inside of you, inside this silence. And I've come to understand. Some people call it the music of the spheres. And to me, it's a beautiful, and I can hear it now. Just it's so far away. It's like in me, because there's a depth that once you get into deeper consciousness, thought world kind of just comes down to nothing. And there's an overwhelming, beautiful silence. And somewhere deep in that silence, all around me, it's like I can hear the angels. That's a constant tune, constant. It's beautiful. It's angelic, and you can't explain it. But I guess it's the music of the spheres. And
Wow.
so on our journey, go ahead.
No, I was just, and so the reason you shared your story with us today is because at the, there is the journey that takes you to that level of consciousness where you can, let's say, hear the music of the spheres or that sense of deep peace. And so the journey is helpful, it's useful. It's the route. So it's the road back to, as you said at the beginning, remember me. So
Yeah.
it's the
Oh,
road
yeah.
back to remembering.
Yes, and see, when you and I get into these, we're going to get into Moses' tabernacle, where the whole world is trying to get to the gate and then get in there and get ourselves sacrificed, or get our sacrifice to God. And when we walk through these things, see, that's our journey. Our journey got us there. It gets us right to the brink of where we need to go. Some people have good journeys, or some people have hardly any problems, and that's fine. But inside, until they have Christ consciousness, they're still going to be in the world of good and bad, the mental world, so to speak. And that's okay. The brain's good. The brain's not evil. The brain is just ignorant and untrained. And eventually we train the brain too. It just trains itself once you're into Christ consciousness. And now the brain is able to communicate. It's able to think straight and clearly, and to get things done in the outer world. But yeah, that's what I want to iterate to you and me. We know our journey is, you and I, we're going to have several of these podcasts, and we're both looking forward to it from some of the things we've discussed. I just wanted to put out a little bit of my journey, how I got started. you know the 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 brokenness that got me there, thank God, because he said, this is my body, it's broken. You
It's
see, and
broken for
unless we
you.
understand the brokenness, unless we understand that, and then the wine was the kiss on the cheek.
Yeah. And those little moments of love that made all the difference, the kindness on the outside that just
Exactly.
helped to shift your perspective. And we've all had those as well, because it can't just be one way. In amongst the trouble, there's always a light. In amongst the darkness, once the light shines, it overcomes the darkness.
It's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful, excuse me, beautiful journey, and all of us are headed to the same place. That's what he said. Remember me. In other words, not just in memory, but see, you and I and other folks that are in the Christ conscious awareness, and we're drawing. All we're doing really is waking others up to this outside dream, and allowing them to walk in this deep, unadulterated, unmessed with love. And it's an awareness of Christ consciousness, Christ in us, the very hope of glory. God wants to appear on this earth. God's not in this earth. That's why there's so much. He's not in the outer dream. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world.
Yeah.
But Jesus brought the kingdom with him. And whoever knew that man or saw that man, they saw the kingdom of God. And that's our goal. That's where we're headed. That's where we are in the generation that is literally going to open up to this. All the generations before us, thank God, they have built the foundation. They have built all the ups and the downs and the journeys and the good and the bad and the wars, the rumors of war. They've went through it all, and it's still apparent because it's in people's mind. So as within, so without. That's why there's wars. But we're living in an age. We are living in the absolute age of Christ awakening. And if you think about this, 7 days in the Bible is 7 years, and or 1,000 years on earth is a day in heaven. That's
Yes.
what it says. 1,000 years on earth is a day in heaven. So 7,000 years ago was Adam. Okay. 2,000 years ago was Jesus. You see what I mean? So we're entering into the Sabbath day from Adam, which is a day of rest. But we're entering into the third day from Jesus, 3,000 years,
Mm-hmm.
third day. And what happened on the third day? He arose.
He rose. And
So
actually,
even
that's
physically,
tomorrow.
yeah, so even
Yes.
physically, you see, we're entering into the third day.
Amazing. And I know just from speaking with you that you have a lot of stories to tell us that will actually help to unpack a lot of the symbolism of the Bible, a lot of the stories that we can bring into our day-to-day lives and really understand them on a deeper level, because the Bible has different levels of understanding, and I know that your level of understanding has revealed quite a lot to me. So I'm really excited to go forward with these podcasts and to uncover a lot of that as well. So Robert, thank you for today. It was vulnerable, it was raw, it was real, and I appreciate that so very much, and I'm sure our audience will as well. And I so look forward to our next one.
I do too, and I thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and the vulnerability and all that. You've heard the word history, history. Well, it's his story, and all of us have his story in us, and we got to get that story out. And we're in this together. It's our journey.
Yes. And once the story is told, once the story is known, then the story just becomes a background to what already is.
Well, everything that you and I are going to bring forth, you're right, is types and shadows, and just like remember me, it's not just a memory; it's a shadow of what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to bring our bodies together, not physically, but our Christ to consciousness awareness. And this can spread through, and it will spread throughout the whole earth, because Jesus's message is the message that has always been going through the earth. It's just been from different views, and not necessarily in the depth of the Christ view, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So I look forward to that. I look forward to our next one. And so I just would like to just end it there tonight. Robert, again, thank you. And thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening in. Watch out for the next podcast, which will probably be in about a week's time. And we look forward to meeting again, Robert, with you and having our next one.
I look forward to it. And thank you so much. And I will catch you later.
Okay. Have a good rest of the day. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.